Sir, you only teach additional English or even general English, sir?
I
Sir
teach
also
both.
teach QT also.
Okay.
Sir is
Stop talking.
multi-talented.
Stop talking.
So I spoke to you,
Okay.
sir. I don't know who's replying to me, sir.
Okay, we'll start with the next poetry, the Shield of Achilles.
How is this streaming live on YouTube, sir? That's great.
So
Okay,
let's
sorry, I won't disturb, sir. I
discuss.
won't.
Note on the poet. Winston Auden, 21st February 1907 to 29 September 1973, was an Anglo-American poet, best known for love poems such as Funeral Blues, poems on political and social themes such as September 1, 1939, and The Shield of Achilles, poems on cultural and psychological themes such as The Age of Anxiety, and the poems on religious themes such as For the Time Being and Hore Canonice. So here, the Shield of Achilles comes under the category of social themes of W.H. Auden. W.H. Auden is mainly known for his poetry on love, war, and other aspects. So Anglo-American means he has a British ancestry. Okay, later he would have moved on to India, or any one of his parents could be from England. Auden's poetry was noted for its stylistic and technical achievement, its engagement with politics, morals, love, and religion, and its variety in tone, form, and content. He came to wide public attention at the age of 23 in 1930 with his first book, Poems, followed in 1932 by The Orators, three plays written in collaboration with Christopher Isherwood in 1935 to 38, built his reputation as a left-wing political writer. Left-wing means who is inclined towards communist ideology. Auden moved to the United States partly to escape this reputation, and his work in the 1940s, including the long poems For the Time Being and The Sea and the Mirror, focused on religious themes. He won the Pulitzer Prize in Poetry for his 1947 long poem, The Age of Anxiety, the title of which became a popular phrase, described the modern era. In 1956 to 61, he was professor of poetry at Oxford. His lectures were popular with students and faculty and served as the basis of his 1962 prose collection, The Dyer's Hand. Note on the poem. The Shield of Achilles is a poem by W.H. Auden, first published in 1952, and the title work of a collection of poems by Auden published in 1955. It is Auden's response to the detailed description or ekphrasis of the shield borne by the hero Achilles in Homer's epic poem, the Iliad. So Homer's Iliad, okay, is known as the classics. So this is a description of, it is Auden's response to the detailed description of shield borne by the hero Achilles. Are you all aware of Achilles' heel?
Yes, sir, I am aware of it. It's the only weakness of Achilles.
Okay. So even nowadays we use it in terminologies related to sports.
Achilles tendon.
Yes. Okay, let's go through this glossary so that we can understand the question, the poetry better. Axioms, fundamental principles. Achilles, the mythological hero of the Trojan War, famous for his valor, manly beauty. Hephaestus, he was the Greek god of blacksmiths, sculptors, metallurgy, fire, and volcanoes. Thus, he is symbolized with a hammer, an anvil, and a pair of tongs. Thetis is encountered in Greek mythology mostly as a sea nymph or known as the goddess of water, one of the 50 Nereids, daughters of the ancient sea god Nereus. When described, when described as a Nereid in classical myths, Thetis was a daughter of Nereus and Doris and a granddaughter of Thetis, with whom she sometimes shares characteristics. Often she seems to lead the Nereids as they attend to her tasks. Sometimes she also is identified with Metis. Thetis played a key part in the events of the Trojan War, beyond the fact that the judgment of Paris, which essentially kicked off the war, occurred at her wedding. Thetis influenced the actions of the Olympians and her son Achilles. Armorer, a manufacturer of weapons; urchin, a mischievous child; loiter, to stand about without any aim or purpose. Don't loiter around, they say, means don't simply waste time moving around. Comprehension questions, you should always have these questions in mind while you are reading poetry. What is the central theme of the poem? Why was the plain bare and brown? Who is looking armorer's shoulder repetitively? Who is Hephaestus? What does barbed wire suggest in the poem? What did Thetis find when she looked for Achilles and dancing men and women? What does vines and olive trees symbolize in the poem? What did Thetis find when she looked over the shield second time? Explain. Explain the line. They lost their pride and died as men before their bodies die. Before their body dies. Why did Thetis cry out in this poem? Assess the importance of Auden's use of myth in the Shield of Achilles. How does Auden contrast reality and expectation in the Shield of Achilles? How does the poem The Shield of Achilles contrast the ancient and the modern? So with this background, we will just go through poetry. We will just have a preliminary reading of the poetry. Then we will discuss the meaning of each lines. Poetry 9, The Shield of Achilles, W.H. Auden. She looked over his shoulder for vines and olive trees, marble, well-governed cities, and ships upon untamed seas. But there on the shining metal, his hands had put instead an artificial wilderness under sky like lead. A plain without a feature, bare and brown, no blade of grass, no sign of neighborhood, nothing to eat and nowhere to sit down. Yet congregated on its blankness stood an unintelligible multitude, a million eyes, a million boots in line, without expression, waiting for a sign. Out of the air a voice without a face, proved by statistics that some cause was just
कुछ करके कुछ लगता है कि विराट कोहली की तरफ क्योंकि वो भी ऐसे ही विराट कोहली अपने में बिल्ड करते हैं
a plain without a feature, bare and brown, no blade of grass, no sign of neighborhood, nothing to eat and nowhere to sit down, yet congregated on its blankness stood an unintelligible multitude, a million eyes, a million boots in line, without expression, waiting for a sign. Out of the air, a voice without a face, proved by statistics that some cause was just, in tones as dry and level as the place. No one was cheered and nothing was discussed. Column by column in a cloud of dust, they marched away, enduring a belief whose logic brought them somewhere else to grief. She looked over his shoulder for ritual pieties, white flower garlanded heifers, libation, and sacrifice. But there on the shining metal, where the altar should have been, she saw by his flickering forged light quite another scene. Barbed wire enclosed an arbitrary spot where board officials launched. One cracked a joke, and sentries sweated, for the day was hot. A crowd of ordinary decent folk watched from without and neither moved nor spoke, as three pale figures were led forth and bound to three posts driven upright in the ground. The mass and majesty of this world, all that carries weight and always weighs the same, lay in the hands of others. They were small and could not hope for help, and no help came. What their foes liked to do was done. Their shame was all the worst could wish. They lost their pride and died as men before their bodies died. She looked over his shoulder for athletes at their games, men and women in a dance, moving their sweet limbs, quick, quick to music. But there on the shining shield, his hands had set no dancing floor, but a weed choked field. A ragged urchin, aimlessly and alone, loitered about that vacancy. A bird flew up to safety from his well aimed stone. That girls are raped, that two boys knife a third were axioms to him who would never heard of any world where promises were kept, or one could weep because another wept. The thin lipped armorer, Hephaestus, hobbled away. Thetis of the shining breast cried out in dismay, and what the god had wrought to please her son, the strong, iron-hearted man, slaying Achilles, who would not live long.
So you like Kendall or Kylie?
Huh?
So you prefer Kendall or Kylie?